PC gaming has no doubt exploded over the last 10 years, and at the height of this growth, two of the most popular graphics cards ever to release entered the market and have been duking it out ever since. Today, we're looking at a 2025 rematch between two of the most iconic value GPUs of the 2010s, the NVIDIA GTX 1060 6GB and the AMD Radeon RX 580 8GB.
But before we get into all the details on these old GPUs, let's say you got those or you got yourself a new GPU and you decide to upgrade to a bigger monitor to take advantage of all that graphical power you have, or you just want to get it off your desk. You probably noticed that you're pinching for desktop space, or maybe you can't find a nice angle/position for it. Those weighty big monitors require stands, so if you want to reclaim that lost desktop space and have more freedom to adjust how you view your monitor, be sure to check out Silverstone's ARM15 because they're sponsoring today's video. Constructed mainly aluminum and steel, this monitor arm utilizes a heavy-duty gas spring to help effortlessly tilt, swivel, and pivot monitors up to 57 inches in size or 60 pounds in weight. You can either clamp or grommet mount the ARM15, making it easy to blend into your desktop environment seamlessly. Elevate your monitor game literally by picking up one of Silverstone's ARM15 monitor arms via the link in the description below. Thanks to Silverstone for sponsoring today's video.
It's been about 3 years since I last looked at this comparison, and the 5th time that we've done it overall. And one of the major arguments for AMD, especially back when this 580 mattered, was that Team Red aged like fine wine, while NVIDIA aged more like you when you realize that people who were born after the Matrix came out are already out of college and starting their careers. So we're gonna be looking at 10 recent games to see not only which card comes out on top, but also to determine if either of these cards have been left behind support-wise. And before the end of the video, we also want to get your brain juices flowing on how these cards compare to the current state of affairs, as well as where things are headed in the graphics market. So let's dive in. The first game we're looking at is Black Myth Wukong, where it's already a tight race between the 1060 and 580. The two cards perform nearly the same, both offering playable performance and acceptable visual fidelity. In Baldur's Gate 3, the gap does widen a bit, though the frame time performance is looking better for the 1060 despite its lower average. On both cards though, performance was good in Baldur's Gate, with decent visuals and honestly some room to bump the settings to high or maybe even turn FSR off. In Hogwarts Legacy, we dropped FSR down to balance to reach about 60 FPS at the medium preset, and it's probably worth dropping to low settings and disabling FSR though, as FSR balance looks pretty rough in this game at 1080p. Performance-wise, we're definitely seeing a trend by now. The RX 580 is consistently ahead in averages, but sometimes does show less impressive frame pacing, meaning it's a less consistent gaming experience. Spider-Man Miles Morales is a lighter title, so we didn't need FSR at the medium preset. Both cards pushed over 60 FPS, which meant the game looked and played great on either one. In Counter-Strike 2, we see the GTX 1060's first victory as it manages a 25% lead over the Radeon card. The 1060's only other victory was in Helldivers 2, where it pulled a smaller win, but hey, a win's a win. Helldivers 2 looks okay with these settings, but you might consider dropping to low and disabling FSR like Hogwarts Legacy. In God of War Ragnarok, it's another small lead for the RX 580, though both cards performed admirably. In Returnal, the two cards were just about tied. This isn't surprising as the game does generally favor NVIDIA cards, despite it being a PlayStation title and releasing for AMD hardware. In Cyberpunk 2077, another small win was handed to the RX 580, though it also required some heavier upscaling to get it to 60 FPS at medium. So AMD taking the win in an NVIDIA heavy title. All right, let's talk about the final game we tested. So we mentioned earlier that part of the reason we made this video was to see if there were any obvious issues running recent titles outside of purely performance. And well, we can't be too disappointed that only one of the 10 games we tested gave us problems. But what's surprising is that it's one of the most popular titles on Steam, and that's Call of Duty Black Ops 6. In our recent revisit of the GTX 1080 Ti, which you can check out here, we encountered the very same problem, crashing within minutes of launching the game. This problem spared the RX 580 though, so we have to assume it's some NVIDIA driver issue with older cards. What's perhaps most infuriating is the fact that the GTX 1080 Ti is explicitly mentioned in the Black Ops 6 recommended system requirements. On top of that, they list an even older card, the GTX 960, as the minimum requirement. I don't know if they tested these or if NVIDIA was just having driver issues when we tested, but it's also possible that it's only an issue with the version of Windows 11 we have installed, 24H2, which is the most most recent. That's not an excuse, but maybe they deserve some leeway since it did come out in the recent months. And after some Googling, we found that one potential solution was try to downgrade to NVIDIA's game-ready driver of 560.70. And while this helped us get it running long enough to capture some benchmark data, the crashing was all but resolved. For the first several attempts to get it running, it crashed much like it does with the latest driver. But it's after these failed attempts that it, for some reason, begins to run fine. Some people online suggest that it's a memory leak and claim that setting the memory usage target to 50% stops the crashing. However, we found the game to still be as unstable as grandma after a hip replacement. There's a sizable chunk of gamers who still use a 10 series GeForce card, so hopefully NVIDIA gets on this if they want to make any claims about longevity with their products, though that's not really NVIDIA's thing, is I mean, at this point, Black Ops 6 costs more than you can get a 1064, so you don't need me to tell you that it's time to upgrade. That's not the case for the 1080 Ti though. It's a shame to see it abandoned like this. Alright, enough doom and gloom about driver support. What's the big takeaway? Well, the RX 580 8GB wins in both performance and support in our book. It consistently outpaces the GTX 1066GB for all but 2 of the titles we tested. It also doesn't suffer from any driver stability issues, which is obviously not something we can say for the 1060, but we've harped on that enough. Overall, it's nice to see that these cards are still kicking. If you're still using one, your performance might not far outpace today's gaming handhelds, but hey, you've definitely saved some cash by sticking with it for this long. But the truth is, we're in unprecedented territory with these cards. AMD and NVIDIA tend to end support for GPUs much sooner than they are for the Polaris and Pascal generations of GPUs. You know, the ones we have here. 6 to 7 years was about the average before this Methuselah's coming along. It's even more wild that the GTX 900 series is still getting regular driver updates. NVIDIA did, in a recent CUDA toolkit update, say that the 9 and 10 series are considered feature complete, so we might see driver support end soon, but we honestly have no idea when AMD and NVIDIA are going to firmly end driver support for these things. AMD's already started with some Linux demotions for theirs, but NVIDIA still seems to be holding strong. If you have these because you're tight on cash, I hope for your sake they do keep support going. But if you're looking to upgrade from one of these geezers, then it'll be worth knowing that just about anything recent will perform miles better. Your best bet would be to snag a used RX 7600, 6700, or 6700 XT for under $300 and call it a day. You'd be looking at least 2 or 3 times the GPU horsepower of either of the cards we tested today. And if you're still on a CPU from 2016, well, you might be just as, if not more limited by that in today's games. These benchmark results today only represent the maximum capability of these cards, not what a PC from that time is capable of today. So keep that in mind. A 7th gen Intel or 1st gen Ryzen chip will just about crawl in some recent games. So what do you guys think of these 2 cards? Have we had such fierce competition in the low to mid range since then? It feels like NVIDIA doesn't even have to try since Radeon continues to bleed market share regardless of whether NVIDIA brings better value or not. And it's a pretty sad situation when NVIDIA can release a 4060 Ti that brings basically no extra performance or value over its predecessor. Maybe there's hope for the 5060 Ti? Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments, as well as specifically what you'd like to see out of AMD's and NVIDIA's next generation in the mid-tier. High-end competitors from Radeon? Come on, you can do it. But I would argue that we definitely need more competition in the sub $300 space. Intel's the only one there right now.